A $32 billion Florida-based wind turbine company called NextEra has sued an Ontario resident who doesn't want skyscraper-sized wind factories sprouting up around her home. Now, everyone has the right to file a lawsuit in a Canadian court, even foreign multi-billion-dollar giants. Hey, mega corporations have feelings too. They're suing this woman, Esther Reitman. So what does NextEra claim that Esther did to them? Did she do what other eco-activists sometimes do when fighting against, say, forestry companies or oil and gas companies? Did she spike trees with metal spikes to destroy sawmills like environmental extremists have done in BC? Did she blow up a natural gas pipeline like has happened in BC and Alberta and was celebrated in a video game sponsored by the government of Ontario? Did she trespass on NextEra property like I Don't Know More protesters did, blocking railway lines and a road to a diamond mine near Attawapiskat? No. Esther Reitman didn't do any of those things. She didn't do anything illegal at all. She had the temerity to oppose the installation of skyscraper-high wind turbines near her home in Curwood, Ontario, which is between London and Sarnia. Here's a map of what her community looks like. The dark blue dots are the turbines that are already built. The red dots are actual locations of proposed new turbines. And the light blue dots are the general location of other proposed turbines. Remember, those aren't little mini golf-sized windmills. They're taller than most buildings in downtown Toronto. And they spin and make noise and vibrate and create a light flicker, and they kill birds and bats. And of course, they're ugly machines that are about to blight one of the most beautiful parts of Ontario. That's when they work properly, of course. They often don't work properly. Sometimes they explode, like this one in Denmark. Sometimes they catch fire, like this one in Alberta just a couple years ago. And sometimes they just fall down while spinning. Listen to this.
It's the size of a 747 airplane wing, and last night it came crashing down just about a mile away from some homes. Well, today residents in Ocotillo are raising concerns over a mishap at a nearby wind turbine farm.
You know, that made it look like a pinwheel, but each of those blades is 173 feet long, which is the height of a 17-story building. That's the length of an airplane wing. Yeah, sucks to live near those, doesn't it? And of course, these people were forced, these windmills were forced on people across Ontario over the objections of many local residents because the Liberal government took away the traditional local rights of municipalities to review and regulate planning and development. It was forced on voters. Now, voters don't like that. When they're Liberal voters, things forced on them, like natural gas power plants, are canceled by the Liberal government in a panic in the middle of an election at a cost to the public of nearly $1 billion. But those are city voters, Liberals. Rural voters, well, hell, they're probably Tories anyways. Make them live with the wind turbines. Yeah, the local municipalities weren't allowed to review this new skyline. Seriously, look at that map again. Each of those dots will be a 30 or 40 or 50-story building. It's a wind turbine. They're building a new downtown Toronto in Western Ontario, 100 screaming, flickering turbines to live under. But it all went so smoothly for NextEra. I mean, when you've got $32 billion in stock market capitalization, you can just buy things. Now, NextEra has not one, not two, not three, not four. They have 5 registered lobbyists at Queen's Park, the Ontario legislature. That's a lot of expensive lunches and political massages to get things done. So back to the lawsuit. I mean, NextEra got what it wanted, right? They got to put up their wind factories over local objections. They got extremely favorable rates for power, many times more than what coal-fired or gas-fired or nuclear-fired power plants get. I mean, NextEra is loving it. So what's the problem? Well, they just couldn't convince Esther Reitman and her ragtag crew of local residents. I guess they should have hired a few more lobbyists, or I don't know, maybe Esther couldn't be persuaded with a few fine meals and a bottle of wine. Maybe she just didn't want to live on a factory floor. Maybe she wanted to live in the country in peace. So she set up a little website, pretty rickety, pretty homemade. Just look at it. I mean, talk about grassroots. Yeah, Esther couldn't hire fancy lobbyists or set up a corporate-style website like NextEra does. She made some home movies about what she thought would happen to her community if the wind factories went up. She was worried about the effect on humans, of course, and on birds, too. I guess you could say she's an environmentalist, but not one of those international jet-setting environmentalist types, not the professionals, the ones who are highly paid to jet around the world to meddle in other people's business, to complain. She actually was worried about her own neighborhood. This wasn't a job for her. It was actually just about her life. Now, when you're up against a $32 billion foreign company and you're just an ordinary person, it's tough. I mean, talk about David and Goliath. And it reminds me of that movie, Erin Brockovich, where a big company was trying to bully a woman and kept saying her health concerns were BS. Remember that show? Take a look.
They have had
breast cysts, uterine cancer, Hodgkin's disease, immune deficiencies, asthma, chronic nosebleeds.
A million things going to cause those problems. Poor diet, bad genes, irresponsible lifestyle.
Now, the thing is, in that movie, Erin Brockovich sued the big company, but here the big company is suing our Erin Brockovich, Esther Reitman. They filed this massive lawsuit in Ontario's Superior Court just last month. It's drafted by McCarthy Tétrault, one of the biggest, most expensive law firms in Canada. If you look at the back of the lawsuit, 3 lawyers worked on this suit. Who knows how much money it costs just for this one step in the legal process. And obviously, to fight back our Erin Brockovich, Esther Reitman is going to have to hire a lawyer. Probably spend 20, 30 grand on just a bare bones statement of defense. But that's just step 1 and step 2. There could be 30 more steps before this thing even sees a courtroom. There is no chance that this suit, if it were fully litigated, would cost Esther Reitman less than $250,000. I mean, obviously she doesn't have that money. Obviously NextEra does. They're taking painstaking steps to prove just how much money and how many lawyers they have. On purpose, it's about intimidating her, striking terror in her heart. I mean, wouldn't you be terrified if a $32 billion company hired a huge law firm to sue you to kingdom come? It's called a SLAP suit. That stands for Strategic Litigation Against Public Participation, as in, it's not actually a real lawsuit. It's not a legal document at all. It's a political document. It's about terrifying her into submission, about shutting her up. Again, wouldn't you be tempted to shut up if that happened to you? Okay, so what exactly did Esther Reitman do? What law did she break? Why is a multinational company suing her to smithereens? Well, I'll tell you after the commercial break. So what did little Esther do that made the big wind turbine company so mad? Why are they suing her? Well, it's because she used a tool of political commentary that is so standard, so commonplace, it's not even noteworthy. She mocked the company using satire and parody. I mean, we've seen this a million times. People who don't like the seed company Monsanto call it Monsatan. It's not really called Monsatan. That's a political commentary. Greenpeace is a specialist at this. They take companies' logos and alter them for critical or satirical political purposes. Here are some Greenpeace modifications of BP's logo. After their oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, well, that's what Esther did. She took the wind factory's name, NextEra, and she changed it in mockery to Next Terror or Next Error, Next Terror. Either way, it was clear that she didn't like them. Now, we do this all the time in politics. We mock each other's party names. I remember when the Liberals called the Reform Party the Deform Party. I remember the Liberals called the Reform Conservative Alliance the Reformatories, and two can play that game, of course. I mean, back when I published the Western Standard magazine, we mocked the Liberal Party. We made this poster calling them the Libranos, half Liberal Party, half Sopranos. We did that almost 10 years ago. I think it stands up pretty well over time, don't you think? We do it with sports teams. We give our opponents bad nicknames, and they do the same to us. It's called debate. It's called humor. It's called arguing. It's what people do in a peaceful fight. They use words, not fists or knives or bombs. Frankly, of all the environmentalist tactics I've ever seen, simply calling a company by a mean nickname is pretty tame. And that is why NextEra is suing Esther Reitman. I am serious for calling them a mean nickname, calling NextEra Next Terror. That's it. I bet you didn't think a $32 billion company had feelings that could be so easily hurt. It's funny that hurt feelings and other pretend offenses like that are what motivates NextEra's suit. Because according to a peer-reviewed study in the Journal of the College of Family Physicians of Canada, and I quote, the most commonly reported industrial wind turbine-induced symptoms as altered quality of sleep, life, sleep disturbance, excessive tiredness, headache, stress, and distress. Other reported effects include migraines, hearing problems, tinnitus, heart palpitations, anxiety, and depression. In addition, degraded living conditions and adverse socioeconomic effects have been reported. So hurt feelings and then a little bit more, I guess. Some people might even say that they were terrified by wind turbines in the day, wind turbines in the night, wind turbines while you're sleeping. You can never turn the damn things off. Yeah, I can believe that some people would in fact be terrified by them. Maybe that's why NextEra sued, because NextEra really does strike a chord with some people. I wonder what their lobbyists in Toronto told headquarters in Florida to do. I wonder if they took a poll. Okay, now you're probably thinking there is no crime of making fun of a company. That's not really even defamation. I mean, a Florida company can't really go to the Human Rights Commission, right? There was no crime here, no trespass, no eco-terrorism. So what does the lawsuit actually say? Well, that's where it pays to have one of the most expensive law firms in Canada. They're clever. They'll come up with something. Get this, NextEra's lawyers actually argue that by making the spoof logo, by making a parody of NextEra called Next Terror, little Esther Reitman is violating their trademark for her own commercial interests, that she's trying to make money off their name. I'm serious. I read the lawsuit. Now, I am a lawyer, but I'm not a trademark specialist, but I know enough about trademark law to know what it is and what it isn't. Now, you can't come so close to someone else's logo or name that it causes confusion in the market, that you pass yourself off as someone else and make a buck off it. So you can't make a soda pop called, oh, I don't know, Coca-Cola. You can't make a hamburger chain called McDonald's spelled with the extra A. It's obvious why. You're confusing people. You're passing yourself off as your competitor. You're tricking people, and you're doing it to make money. That's not fair. That's not allowed. We all support that law. It protects the property right of intellectual property, intellectual freedom. But dear friends, do you think that Esther Reitman, by making a spoof of the logo of NextEra, is truly trying to confuse people and make them think that her little company is a multinational wind turbine colossus, that maybe they should buy their wind turbines from her instead of from NextEra? It's so absurd. Only an $800 an hour lawyer could dream that one up, eh? What business does NextEra actually think Esther is running? Well, their lawsuit tells us she has a legal defense fund, you see, to stop the wind turbines being forced down her throat, and now presumably to defend herself against this lawsuit. So that's her business, according to NextEra, fighting back against their lawyers. That's what NextEra says she's passing herself off as. She's deliberately confusing the public to make them think her company, called NextEra, is really NextEra, so they give her money on those false pretenses for her business, which is actually to defend against NextEra. Do they even believe that crap themselves? Do they think a single person who clicks on her little PayPal button to fight against wind turbines actually thinks they're buying a wind turbine or something from a company called NextEra? I mean, that is an insult to our intelligence. I am quite sure any judge in Ontario will see it as a joke lawsuit, a nuisance lawsuit, a bully lawsuit, a slap lawsuit. But that's the thing. Do you really believe that little Esther Reitman will be able to pay lawyers long enough to get her day in court? This thing could take 5 years and a quarter, $500,000. NextEra makes that in minutes. That's a life savings for Esther. Sorry, she won't last that long. She's not a paralegal like Aaron Brockovich. NextEra is counting on this lawsuit just to crush Esther before it gets before a judge to be thrown out. Here, I know you think I'm making this up. Surely a reputable blue chip company and a reputable blue chip law firm wouldn't engage in such bullying. Okay, fine. Here, let me quote from the lawsuit statement of claim itself. Here is section 1A3 of the lawsuit that claims Esther, quote, advertised her services in association with a trademark that was confusing with the plaintiff's registered trademarks. I am quoting here seriously. They are saying Esther's anti-turbine campaign is a service, and it was confusing NextEra's customers, so she's not allowed to mock their name or logo, they say. Paragraph 19 of the lawsuit shows that they're keeping close tabs on Esther. Oh, I won't call it spying, though. They're furious that she uploaded a YouTube video about NextEra destroying a bald eagle nest and habitat. That's what this is about, isn't it? Not her jokes about their name. Her truth about wind turbines and birds, isn't that? I mean, no one wants to see this, right? That's a condor hitting a turbine in California. Maybe videos like this that Esther likes to upload to YouTube is why NextEra is actually suing. On paragraph 28 of their lawsuit, they document how they started to bother Esther about this. They flooded her with phone calls day after day, week after week. Then they sent her a threatening cease and desist letter. Funny enough, that just made her madder. But get this. Paragraph 32 of the lawsuit. NextEra issued a formal notice to WordPress.com, the host service provider for both websites, and requested that the offending logos be removed for copyright infringement. The internet company actually obeyed Nextera at first, but when Esther responded saying she had every legal right to use those logos, the company put the logos back up. They believe in free speech at WordPress. That's the blogging website company. Just stop and think about just what happened here for a second. A $32 billion a year foreign company tried to bully an internet company into deleting an insult on a blogger's website. Just stop and think about the kind of people on each side of this fight. Oh, okay, that didn't work, did it? So off to court the mega corporation went. And their big argument, well, let me quote Section 35 of the lawsuit. The term terror and terrorist is reserved for organizations with extreme and violent criminal aims. The term terror is associated with organizations such as Al-Qaeda, Black September, Hezbollah. Well, that is true. Those are terrorists. Does anyone think that Esther's logo mockery is comparing Nextera to Osama bin Laden? And if they did, can anyone please tell me, in any event, what law that's against? The law of defamation, to mock and compare someone to someone else who is odious? How many times have right-wingers been called Nazis or left-wingers been called communists? How many times have I called Jack Layton Taliban Jack for wanting to negotiate with the terrorists in Afghanistan? It's called a vigorous debate. You can say it's mean or unfair or unreasonable. You might even be right. But that's not against the law. Neither in the United States nor in Canada, which is why WordPress, the blogging company, put the logos back up. There is no merit to this lawsuit. It will fail if it ever gets to trial, but it will not get to trial because one side is funded by billionaire bullies and the other side is just little Esther and her blog. I've invited Esther on the show. She's busy at a wind turbine hearing today, so hopefully we'll get her on later this week. I've also reached out several times to Nextera, to their Canadian branch plant. They refuse to come on the show, but I've offered them a standing invitation. They're welcome to come on. I want them to answer the questions I've asked earlier. If my facts are wrong, I want them to correct me. If my opinions are unreasonable, I want them to say why. I want them to explain their convoluted legal theory that this lone protester is trying to pass off her blog as Nextera itself. I want them to explain how her tiny legal defense fund is a business that she's running. I want to know why they think they can call up an internet company and just order them to take down someone's blog without a court hearing. I want to know why they think someone shouldn't be able to mock a multi-billion-dollar company, even using the word terrorist. And I want to know why and whether this lawsuit itself is in fact terrifying. And if that is not its true purpose, to terrify her. Here's a letter Nextera sent me. It's from Steve Stengel at the company. Quote, "It is important for you to know that we are not trying to prevent anyone from commenting about our company or wind projects. That is not what our action is about. We respect a person's right to criticize us, and we work very hard to try to prevent this action. That is very clear in our filing. Our action against Ms. Reitman is about one thing only. We are simply trying to protect a logo that is part of our brand that we have built over time. The court may or may not agree with us, but the circumstances require the company to take these steps to protect itself." And now I pressed Mr. Stengel for more, and he wrote this to me. "This is not a slap lawsuit, but a measured response to protect the goodwill associated with Nextera's name and registered logos. Ms. Reitman is not being oppressed or silenced. She is able to express her opposition to Nextera in her community. If this case ever goes to trial, Nextera will not be keeping any damages, but donating them to the United Way. We hope that this will not be necessary. Ms. Reitman herself can bring this litigation to an immediate end by removing the defaced name and logos from her websites, while otherwise keeping her stories completely intact." You know, this is a David and Goliath case. It's about censorship and free speech. And it's about the right to protest these atrocious wind turbine factories being forced into our neighborhoods. And it's about a multi-billion-dollar foreign company with 5 slick lobbyists and 3 slick lawyers on the payroll versus one woman standing up and saying no. You know what? She's right to be terrified by Nextera, and so should the rest of us.